This video is sponsored by Skillshare. For over 5 years now, I've been experimenting with high dynamic range video. I've uploaded over 100 unlisted videos to test every variation I could possibly think of. I have waited days and weeks for YouTube to process my HDR content, and I've been continuously comparing my HDR videos on every phone, tablet, TV and PC monitor, whether it's IPS or OLED, basically any display I can get my hands on. So HDR has been consuming my life for these past 5 years, and today I want to share with you what I've learned and how you can make great HDR content. So what is HDR and why should you care? If I'm being completely honest, the more I've learned about HDR, the more I've realized that it's actually not that big of a deal. If real life was a video game, HDR would be a minor patch note. If you have two really high bitrate 4K video files, where one is HDR and the other is what we now call SDR, you most likely wouldn't be able to tell which one is HDR. In fact, you would actually really struggle, especially if the footage has a little bit of noise in it and both videos play with the same brightness. So I love HDR, but I think it's important to acknowledge that this technology is more of an incremental upgrade if you strictly consider the perceived quality of a video. But to answer the question, HDR videos have more colors than SDR videos, so you get less banding, and on most OLED displays, the video will be brighter than the UI surrounding it. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's all you need to know for this video. Okay, enough theory, let's get more practical. Here I am in Windows 11 on my PC. Now I'm going to take you through every step of the workflow I've ended up with, every button click and setting I've ended up using for making HDR videos. First, you're going to need the studio version of DaVinci Resolve. Unfortunately, this is the paid version of DaVinci Resolve, and as of February 2024, there doesn't seem to be any easy way to export HDR videos using only free and open source software. So in DaVinci Resolve Studio, the default timeline has standard dynamic range with the color space set to Rec 709. But Rec 709 isn't optimal for HDR, so to change this, go to File, Project Settings, Color Management. And under Color Science, we want to change it from DaVinci YRGB to DaVinci YRGB Color Managed, because that gives us access to this magic button that is automatic color management. So we don't have to worry about any of these formats, we can simply set our color processing mode to HDR. And now under Output Color Space, we can choose between HLG and PQ. So that's Hybrid Log Gamma and Perceptual Quantizer. Now, I've tried all the HDR formats, and I have a clear favorite. It's Hybrid Log Gamma, by far. This HDR format has backwards compatibility with SDR, so if someone watches your HDR video on an SDR display, it will still look great. But if you use PQ, you're gonna have to use down conversion LUTs, which is a confusing rabbit hole we won't be diving into in this video. So let's select HLG, and then let's click Save. I want to give a big thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of online classes and members who come together to find inspiration and take the next step in their creative journey. And one of the most exciting features on Skillshare is their learning paths. These are curated class collections designed to take you from a beginner to advanced level in a specific skill or area of expertise. Imagine having a roadmap for your learning, guiding you through each step of the process. This is what learning paths offer. You get a clear direction which helps keep track of your progress, whether you're into photography, graphic design, music production, cooking, business, marketing. Skillshare has learning paths that cater to every interest. I've been checking out this learning path from Brent Evanston. It is 7 classes where you'll get a solid foundation for drawing practices, which I think is a great skill set to have as a 3D artist. And also as a 3D artist, I can recommend Southern Shotty. He's got a great introduction to Blender class on Skillshare, and his visual style is so warm and charming. I kind of want to live in this world that he's creating in his classes. So the first 500 people to use my link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so check out the link in the description to learn more. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, so not only is HLG HDR the easiest format to use because of the backwards compatibility with SDR, it's also super easy to use because more and more cameras with 10-bit sensors can film directly in HLG. Hello! I have a new camera. So here on my desktop I have an HLG video file shot with the Lumix S5 Mark II X. So let's just drag this into our media pool, and now we can drag this onto our timeline. Okay, we have our clip in HDR on our timeline, but one thing I want you to be very careful about is that the colors that you're currently seeing in this viewport, they are wrong. But when you export the final video, they will be correct. So yeah, without getting too advanced, it's no problem to import an HLG video file and it's gonna look good, okay? You can trust this guy. So here are the settings that you need to export a video that will play in HDR on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, I don't know. Most platforms will support this HDR format. So the very easy solution is you can go quick export and then you change it to H.265 master, and this actually has everything you need. You have the video codec is H.265, And then you have the main 10 encoding profile, which many websites need to just understand that this is a 10-bit HDR video. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I have tried so many different variations of this, and this is actually everything you need to do. So now you can just click export, give it a name, vlog 10-bit HLG HDR version 1, and then just click save and it will start exporting the video. And now if you take this video file and just upload it to YouTube, you can expect between 1 hour to literally 1 week to just process this into HDR. And what's interesting is that you have no idea when it's going to be finished processing into HDR. This video is in HDR, but it just says video quality SD HD 4K. But if you go to the editor tab, you can see this colored text up here. This is the only indicator you get that you successfully uploaded an HDR video, or at least until it has finished processing. So in my experience, YouTube takes between 1 hour to 2 days to process a 4K 30 FPS video, and a 4K 60 FPS video can take between 3 days and 1 week. And you don't really have a progress bar, you just have to wait. But if you're making an Instagram reel, that will process into HDR immediately. However, the SDR down conversions on Instagram Reels are a little bit darker, so make sure your HDR Instagram Reels are extra bright. And fun fact, YouTube Shorts doesn't support HDR yet. I tried to upload this in HDR, but it just doesn't seem to be playing in HDR. Oh, and one more fun fact, I do have a secret channel with 0 subscribers that I just use for testing HDR content, and that channel takes a lot longer to process HDR videos. So in my testing, it seems that the more subscribers you have, the faster the video will process into HDR. But now, this is where this video gets a little bit more advanced. What if you want to combine, let's say, some screen capture from your 8-bit SDR monitor with a render from Blender, which was rendered as a 16-bit PNG sequence, and then combine that on the same timeline as the HLG footage, which was shot in 10-bit. You're going to need to be able to color grade that on a monitor that can display HDR in a proper way. But since we can't trust the colors that we see here in DaVinci Resolve, at least not on Windows, we're going to have to use a playback card to connect to an external HDR monitor. So this is the Decklink Mini Monitor 4K. It is a playback card made by Blackmagic Design, the company that makes DaVinci Resolve. So you connect this card to the motherboard of your desktop PC, and it allows you to accurately monitor the HDR video. I think you can also use this, the Ultra Studio Mini 4K, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Don't buy this without researching it. I have this, the Decklink Mini Monitor 4K. And then you need to take an HDMI cable out of this Decklink card, and then you need to plug that into this, an HDR monitor. So I'm using the Atomos Shinobi 7-inch 2200 nits HDR monitor. This monitor is just ridiculously bright. So yeah, that is the sad part of HDR right now. You need relatively expensive hardware to do real-time HDR color grading in DaVinci Resolve. But one thing that is possible to do, and I actually do this a lot, is that you can transfer the HDR video to your phone. And then you can just use iPhone's default way of editing videos and images. And I actually end up doing this on almost all my Instagram Reels because most of them are just one shot, and the video is, after all, going to be played in the app on a phone. So, I mean, it makes total sense to do the color grading on the phone itself. So yeah, if you want to just try out HDR and see if it's for you, I highly recommend just grading it on your phone. That's honestly such an easy and fast way to get started with HDR. If you want to learn more about the tech behind HDR, the Wikipedia article for High Dynamic Range Television is actually a really great theoretical introduction. And then for a better insight into a practical use case, I can highly recommend reading BBC's production architecture for the Coronation of King Charles. That is a fantastic article. Right now, I don't think Blender has great support for HDR. The only thing we have is this High Dynamic Range button, which is currently not available on anything else than MacBooks, I think. And it clearly states that Filmic or AGX are not made for HDR. So yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate that Blender's default view transform doesn't really support HDR, but I use AGX anyways. I think AGX looks really nice in HDR because you get this beautiful highlight compression. It has this really nice subtle saturation in the highlights, and I also really like how it prevents anything from being overexposed. Like, trying to do anything with the standard view transform in Blender is just so difficult, and you probably know what I'm talking about if you tried it. And I know some people are going to be asking me, how does EXR come into this HDR workflow? And the simple answer is, I just don't really like the current AGX implementation in DaVinci Resolve. I think it's much easier to just burn the view transform into the 16-bit PNGs. You know, I'm usually a really big EXR advocate, but it's just, I love grading PNGs. I do actually always render in EXR, but then I just re-encode it to 16-bit PNG. That was a lot of rambling at the end there, I'm sorry, but I really hope this workflow is valuable for you. Please don't buy any hardware you don't need based on this video. Do your own research. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.